Welcome to Let Me Know How It Is, a pop culture podcast about TV, movies, comics, and all things geek. Today, we spotlight writer-producer extraordinaire Dwayne McDuffie. Thanks for listening. All right, we have another spotlight episode tonight where we focus on a specific movie, show, or creator. Today, we celebrate the birth of one of the greats, Dwayne McDuffie. I'm Zach Slater.
I'm Frank Melman.
This is Tommy Smithereens.
And I'm Clifton.
All right. So, listeners, I'm going to hit you with it right away. Dwayne McDuffie is such an important creator in the world of comics. I'm not sure that in the time we have that we're going to be able to do his career justice, but we're going to try. So, let's do his bio first. Dwayne McDuffie was born February 20th, 1962 in Detroit, Michigan. He graduated from University of Michigan with a bachelor's in English and a master's in physics. He then later attended film school at New York University's Tisch School of the Arts. But even at an early age, you could see Dwayne was a special talent. He attended the Roper School in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, which is a school for gifted children where he met lifelong friend and fellow writer Matt Wayne. In The League of One, the Dwayne McDuffie story, that's a documentary feature that you can find on the Justice League Doom Blu-ray. It was revealed by his colleagues that Dwayne McDuffie attended college at the early age of 10. 10 years old.
Wow.
He was a genius by any standard. Fans might know him from his work in animation. He was a writer, story editor, and producer for Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, along with Bruce Timm, James Tucker, and Rich Fogel. Later, he would revamp the popular Ben 10 series with Ben 10 Alien Force and Ben 10 Ultimate Alien. He would go on to write 3 of the DC animated straight-to-video features, including All-Star Superman. As great as all that sounds, his work in comics is even more impressive, where he worked on such characters as Firestorm, Justice League, Fantastic Four, Deathlok, and created damage control over at Marvel, which was later featured in Spider-Man Homecoming, if you guys remember. But he's probably best remembered and most importantly known as one of the creators and co-founders of Milestone Media, a comic book company whose mission was to better represent minorities in the comics industry. There he created or helped create Icon, Rocket, the Blood Syndicate, Hardware, and probably the most popular of them all, Static, which was later adapted into a wildly successful Static Shock animated series on Kids WB, where he worked as a writer. Sadly, this week isn't just the week of his birthday, but also the anniversary of his passing. Dwayne McDuffie passed just one day after his 49th birthday, survived by his wife and mother. So let's start with Milestone.
All right, so Milestone was an imprint through DC. This started off in, hold on a second.
Was it 93?
Yeah, 93, exactly. Yeah. It was started with basically a coalition of African-American writers and artists. Dwayne McDuffie, Dennis Cohen, Michael Davis, and Derek T. Dingle were the 4 that started Milestone. And then, like you said before, they believed that minorities were severely underrepresented in American comics. And Milestone Media was basically their attempt to rectify that situation, to correct that imbalance.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, and looking stuff over for this episode, you find that McDuffie basically wrote the Bible for all those characters. Like, he's the one that basically mapped out, like you said, Static, Icon, Rocket, all the Blood Syndicate, Hardware. Basically, if there's a character that you liked from Milestone, Dwayne McDuffie was the one that pretty much gave them their backstory, their power set, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like anybody, like some of these characters. It was funny when I was looking at the IMDb page for him. There was mentions like in Young Justice for him being there, and it was because of character creation, right? Because Young Justice obviously came out far later after he passed. But we talk about the Blood Syndicates like Holocaust, and that he was in. He's in, I believe, in one of the episodes where it's like a roulette. He's fighting somebody in Roulette's world or Roulette's arena. But obviously, Icon and Rocket appeared in Young Justice. Like you said, Static had his own show.
Yeah.
But in the comics, like I said, he created all those characters. Like the Shadow Cabinet's another book that he created that I think spun out of. I want to say it spun out of the crossover with the Superman titles, because they did an event called the Long Hot Summer, and that was something that happened. But yeah, like there's just I look at the list of all these characters, and it's amazing to me that all of these he had, he created. Every single one, and wrote, like I said, wrote this Bible. I mean, I don't think the Bible's ever been published. I don't know if the Bible's ever shown up anywhere, or if it's got the ability to put that out. But I would love to see the thought process and the character creation for all these characters.
That Bible was instrumental in getting them like partnered up with DC, from what I remember. So, you know, they had that Bible, which, you know, like you said, like a lot of it was Dwayne McDuffie's ideas and backstory for like this whole world for this, you know, what was later known as like the Dakota universe, because it was Dakota City that all these characters all inhabited.
Right.
And the Bible made its way to Paul Levitz, and he took it home and read it over a weekend, and then like called him up like on a Monday or Tuesday, and he's like, we should talk.
Right.
And that's how essentially like DC became like their publisher, but DC had like no editorial like responsibility for them, right? Like they were in control of their books completely.
Right. Well, they had everything, the copyright, the whole. DC was just a means for them to publish the books.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
That was the way it was supposed to be. And then, you know, they would find from time to time that DC would be uncomfortable with something they were doing or didn't want that, you know, or ask them to change stuff. But yeah, I mean, it was, you know, for me at the time, I read them as they came out, and it was, you know, I was so much into the Milestone stuff. I just found I was going through some stuff maybe a month ago, and I found my trading card set for. Oh yeah, yeah. I have the full trading card set for the Milestone stuff. And what it was cool about it was it obviously had all the characters, you know, from the universe, but it also had like people behind, like basically like, you know, Marvel had the bullpen, like the same thing where these are like all the people that worked in the office as well as the creators. So you could actually have like creator cards too.
Wow.
And I found all the 9-pocket sheets filled with these Milestone cards, and I hadn't seen them in forever. But, you know, I love those books. Those books were great. You know, Static, I think we've talked about before, being that, you know, another important, you know, as important to me as Peter Parker. When you're talking about teenage superheroes, you know, it's Peter Parker, it's Mark Grayson from Invincible, it's Kamala Khan, and then it's Static. But I mean, it's one of the things, you know, it's or Virgil Hawkins, I should say.
Right.
But yeah, I loved all of them. I think they were all really good books. They were really solid for a long, long time.
Yeah, my brother was really into Static when it was coming out. I was a little young for the Milestone stuff, like as it was coming out. But I remember like Spider-Man's like my brother's favorite character ever, and so like, and he was like really, really into Static, but he read all of that stuff,
right?
But yeah, I mean, my understanding of it though was like McDuffie was really he was really conscious about trying to have like each of those books have like a different feel.
Yeah,
right. So it was like Icon was like the traditional superhero book, and Static was like your Spider-Man archetype, your teenage, you know, superhero thing, and Hardware was a little darker, and Blood Syndicate was kind of like the 90s edgy, you know, teen book.
Well, I mean, basically, like you said, Static is your teenage superhero, and Virgil's kind of much, you know, kind of like the nerdy kid in the burbs, you know, who gets superpowers because he's at the Big Bang event when this gas gets released. No spoilers. Right. It's, you know, I know spoilers for some people because it's just been finally released in places like Comixology where you can finally get, like, I think at least the first trade. Right. But and then you had, like you said, Blood Syndicate, which was a book about a gang. You know, they were the team book, and they were gangbangers. And then there was, like, you know, a good mix of. It was one of those things where you had an ensemble cast that was of a lot of different minorities. So it was one of those things where you got to see a lot of different walks of life, and then that not everybody, even though, you know, not everybody got along, not everyone, you know, was down with the cause of whatever someone else's cause was. So there was a lot of interplay there.
Sure.
Hardware was kind of an Iron Man type book, but the thing about it was, and I remember it being that they used the idea of, you know, what happens when you, and it was very meta, the idea that what happens if like you create something for a company and they don't want to give you credit, and more importantly, they want to rip you off.
Right.
Which I thought was, you know, was very interesting for the idea of working like for the big two, you know, to have that be the.
Well, I think that there was some actual like real life stuff that he was drawing upon there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you tripped over in your notes, but you know, my understanding of it is that when he was getting his master's in physics, he had created some code or something like that ended up being like used in cruise missile technology.
Yeah.
And he was never consulted on it. He was absolutely like never consulted on it whatsoever. And that was like one of the things, like apparently that was one of the you know, I heard in the documentary through like Matt Wayne and stuff like that that was one of the reasons why he started going towards film school and started pulling in that direction.
Yeah, that makes sense because a lot of Hardware is that way with because Alva, his boss, is like, basically kind of grooms him along, and he's grooming along as kind of his protege, his son, and then we find out that Alva's into some bad stuff and using a lot of his technology for bad stuff. So, but it's a good one too. And then there's Icon, and Icon basically is the idea of, if Superman came to Earth as an alien and then he imprints on a slave family in the 1800s, and then lives to present day, it's long before the idea of like Calvin Ellis Superman or Sunshine Superman in the Grant Morrison Animal Man stuff, where you have a Superman that's a person of color, and how that would play out, and the idea that Rocket is the voice of conscience in that book and saying, listen, there's so much more you could do for your people. That was one of the controversial aspects about Icon. I remember is that when you get to present day, after he's lived through like slavery and civil rights and all that stuff, you get to present day stuff. He's a conservative. Yeah, very much so. He's a conservative black man. And that was like controversial at the time. Yeah. It's very, I mean, she very much gets in his face and is like, I can't, you basically sat here and just watched all this stuff happen. And you chose, this is, after these people basically took you in and showed you the compassion and love. And then you basically sat back and did nothing with all your abilities for all this time. And then sort of, it's almost the idea of like putting this, you need to do more with what you've been given. Yeah. So, yeah, but they're great. I mean, great books. If I remember correctly on that one, like Mark D. Brake does the book. Mm-hmm. I can't remember who does a lot of the other ones. I know John Paul Leon was on Static, right? Okay. Yeah.
Which is co-written by McDuffie and Robert Washington.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, they were saying that with Michael Davis, that Michael Davis is his older sister and he were basically the template or the basics for Static and his sister. I read that in the article. Mm-hmm. They were saying that was that basically, the character's family life and background were specifically based on Michael Davis' own family, including his late sister. And I got that from Bleeding Cool. They were talking about an article about the fact that for some reason Michael Davis was a co-founder, but they've suddenly shied away from it for some reason. But I don't know more about that. But that was the thing that I thought was interesting. More importantly, was the fact that his family was the basis for Virgil's family. So, yeah, I think Static of those four was sort of the last one to come together. Mm-hmm. I think was my understanding. But I mean, they would do other books too, like Zombie and Cobalt. I mean, it wasn't just those four, right? And Milestone went strong for 4 years or so. I mean, they put a lot of books out in that time. Yeah, because again, like I said, Shadow Cabinet was one of the better spinoffs. They had Cobalt, which was a character that was in Hardware, and then they had My Name is Holocaust, which was a book about just the member Holocaust from Shadow Cabinet. But they had spin-off minis or spin-off books, and they went really, really strong for like a good 4 years, and then it kind of fell victim to either people not like Robert Washington or Dwayne McDuffie weren't on the books, and you could immediately tell the quality of the books changed. And then I think the biggest thing was the thing that did it, like, was the issue of Static, where they wanted to have the cover originally had Virgil in a bed on a bed with his girlfriend, like kissing, and there were condoms nearby. Yep. And DC and shied away from it. Yeah, it was apparently a big fight. Yeah, they had a very big fight. Was my understanding of researching it. Right. Yeah. And then there was it was basically they were DC's stance was they didn't want to use sex to sell comics, which is right. It's a funny time to take a stance on that particular issue. Yeah. And that when the guy that was telling them that they couldn't do it had a picture, it was an issue of Legionnaires number 16 with an Adam Hughes cover of Dream Girl, and her she's wearing a thong practically. Right. I mean, it's no offense against Adam Hughes, but it's typical Adam Hughes art. And then on top of that, it was just like they basically Milestone stance was the idea that it wasn't so much sexuality that was the problem; it was black sexuality being expressed. Right. And that was kind of a thing for them to want to be a part of. So and the attempt was to put out something authentic, right? Because they were like Virgil's 15, like this is like what do you think 15-year-olds are doing, right? He's making out with his girlfriend on the couch and right, and there they are, the condoms over there, like on the end table or whatever it was, and I mean, it was never a message of being irresponsible. Of all the characters, I would say that in Milestone, like Virgil Hawkins would do the smart right thing. I mean, that's the character.
So what happened with the cover though?
They actually put a cover over it. So it's got the main cover, and then it's got a cover that overlays over top so that you can just see the two of them. It looks like there's just the two of them kissing like I think it's in a heart. We'll have to pull it up, put it on.
They're framed in a heart.
It's like a die cut cover.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Where you turn the next page and then you see the two of them. And the funny thing is, again, when I think about teenage superheroes, there's a similar, Tommy, wouldn't you say there's a similar issue with Mark and his girlfriend at the time?
You mean in Invincible? Yeah.
Yeah, where they're getting it's the same thing where they're considering whether or not to have sex, and then they're fumbling around. Like the cover basically is the two of them on a bed, and nobody bats an eye, nobody says two words about it.
It's not even brought up. It's the fact that you're mentioning now. There's no controversy involving that issue at all.
No. Yeah. No. Not even a little bit. Yeah. But it's pretty much the exact same. I mean, now that I think about it, it is the exact same situation, and the exact same moment where teenagers are deciding whether or not to have, sex for the first time, and then obviously there's fumfering around and there's condoms, and there's no controversy.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Not even think about that.
Yeah. But I think we're getting away from the whole thing about talk about Dwayne McDuffie.
but no, it's good that you mentioned, because that's the reason why I think that most of the contributions made a difference is his trying to push the status quo of what was occurring, and if he depicted that in his books, it came a result of what he wanted to do and what he wanted it to change,
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of those things where I think that's, we talked about it. I know you and I talked about the idea of, I think this is like Virgil Hawkins is another thing when I thought about this episode was I think of it as like the first place that we saw the black nerd culture start.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's one of those things where like that, because he was so much he's very much, and it's one of the things where it's sad because you just don't see a lot of that. And then I think now of like something that's come out in the last year or so, like Lovecraft Country, right?
No, you're 100% correct.
Tick's character is the same way, where you're like, he's got, like they talk about favorite books, and you can tell that they're into science fiction, and you can tell that they're into time, like all that stuff, like time travel stuff to those characters is nothing. And I think Virgil was the same way. Like I can remember if it was full on Star Trek or something along those lines that he was into. I can't remember.
No, but it's basically a whole thing of Afrofuturism, in which you have a lot of it's strongly depicted as seeing a lot of black people who are engulfed in embracing sci-fi and horror or things of that nature. But no, I agree with you. Started the early 90s is when that really starts to pick up steam, and more people key up on seeing appearances of different people. I mean, hell, you can even attribute that to LeVar Burton.
Yeah, I can see that too. Yeah, you're right.
In Star Trek Next Generation.
That makes sense. Yeah, I can see that as Geordie LaForge, sure.
Yeah, but in the 90s, I'm sure that Virgil, I mean, like, it was cutting edge, which is sad that it's like,
right.
There's, millions millions of nerds out there. And like the idea that like it took till 1993 for there to be a black one in comic books.
Right. To get some kind of representation.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like it's another, it's one of those things where it's another one where I don't think, and it gets on a smaller thing. Like if anyone's ever watched Arrow or watched their depiction of how they had Mr. Terrific, they get Curtis Holt was clearly, black nerd culture all the way. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's one of the things where like, when I think about where, for me, I know like my first acknowledgement was definitely with Static and with Virgil, because that was someplace that, it was just kind of like, well, of course, why wouldn't someone, a person of color, enjoy that same stuff and have favorite novels and have favorite comics and all that kind of stuff. Not that I didn't know people that had all that, but it's one of the things where to see it depicted in a comic was, good, revolutionary, and surprisingly sad revolutionary at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. Static out of all of them appeared to be like sort of the most successful, I would think, because I mean, TV show had a TV show, had a TV show that, was very successful without a toy line and without merchandising and stuff like that, which, in animation, that's almost what it's all about. I mean, like that pretty much like merchandising and toy lines is more or less is what's going to dictate whether or not your show is getting made.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the fact that it went 4 seasons,
totally 52 episodes from 2000 to 2004.
Yeah.
Which he worked on, but he wasn't a producer on, which is a funny thing,
right?
To me, like,
yeah,
yeah,
he wrote, but he wrote a fair amount of it, right?
Yeah, he did. He wrote the pilot of it. Apparently wrote the pilot in a day.
Okay.
From what Alan Burnett and Steve Berger would say on that documentary that I checked out on the Justice League Doom DVD, which he wrote that as well.
Right.
It's an awesome documentary. You should check it out. But yeah, they, wrote it quick. Apparently, like that was a trait of his style. Like like he was a very fast script writer.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, it's. I'm looking at the list here from Wiki, and it's there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I think 11.
Yeah, 11 episodes.
Yeah,
of Static Shock. Out of 52.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, out of 52, he wrote gave the story or the teleplay for. So
yeah.
I mean, it's I agree. The Static was definitely the most up until Young Justice, because it was always fun to play the game of who's in the background of Young Justice.
Right.
And it would be not, and the idea that Icon was a full-on member of the league and Rocket was part of the team was always cool.
Yeah, super cool. Yeah. So okay, so you read Frank, you read the Milestone stuff as it was coming out and everything. So like, Clifton, Tommy, when did you guys when did you know Dwayne McDuffie as a name?
Well, I came fairly late as far as my introduction. So unfortunately, like Frank read Milestone. I didn't even know Milestone existed until Justice League.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when I was introduced to, because of I want to say Justice League Unlimited is when I really came onto the scene of him being a great writer and my exposure to him. How about you, Clifton?
Mine, knowing him as a name was late. Probably in his animated work was the first time I would see his name, popping up in credits, to the point where I'm like, well, I keep seeing this name. Who is this guy? Like, I should really look him up. And then I would look him up and find out that I had been reading his work for years.
Right.
Because before, we jumped into Milestone, which is a huge, groundbreaking thing for him, but he had been in comics a few years before that.
Right.
Yeah.
He had been an assistant editor at Marvel in his 20s, and then started writing for them around 1989. And I was a young kid just getting into comics at that time. And in the intro, Zach had mentioned Damage Control.
Yeah.
And that is one I picked up as a kid. And just to give a brief description of Damage Control, it's a workplace comedy set in the Marvel Universe. We see them, briefly, just a piece of them in Spider-Man Homecoming, where Tyne Daly plays a picture-perfect casting of the CEO of Damage Control straight out of the comics.
Right.
Anne-Marie Hogue looks just like her.
Yep.
From page to real life. But their business was headquartered in the Flatiron Building in New York. They were a contracting company whose sole job was to clean up messes made by superheroes and villains. And they were kind of mercenary because they had contracts with everybody. Like, they had contracts with the Avengers, with Stark, with Dr. Doom. Like, they would clean up the Latverian embassy if it needed cleaning up. Like, they didn't care. It was money.
Right.
They didn't ask questions.
Right.
And it's just funny that it's way ahead of its time, when nobody was doing any kind of sitcom-y stuff with superheroes. And we get that later.
Yeah.
So lots of people jumped on that later. But this was 1989 that he came up with this idea. I believe he was 27 at the time, if I did the math right on his age at the time. And I loved this book when I was a kid. So it was funny, seeing a name much later and being like, oh, you did this thing I loved.
Yeah.
But the book was fun. The book was a lot of fun. It had a huge cast of characters. So there was always, office workplace hijinks going on.
Yeah. My experience was exactly the same thing. I had seen his name enough, similar to when I discovered Paul Dini, where I just noticed this name happens to be on a lot of the episodes that are my favorite for Justice League and stuff like that. So that's when I learned his name. And then went back and then was oh, but he created Static? My brother loved that book. And he did this, he did that. What? My brother was a big Deathlok fan too. I remember he was
the one he did with Dennis Cohen.
Yeah.
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 Right.
And I was he did that too. Oh man, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Was that Deathlok most like the one they did on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
Fairly close, because this one, the Deathlok that they did together was it was kind of the idea of what do you do when you pair Deathlok was originally a future, a look ahead, kind of like a where super soldiers would go to, right?
Right.
Like with Captain America, we obviously had World War II, but then the Deathlok was kind of like a couple decades ahead.
Okay.
But the main idea of the book was like, what happens if you put a pacifist in the body of an insane, killing machine? What happens then? And it's this whole thing of like, and it's one of those things where you have a lot of, and it was, I don't know if it's the first place I saw it, but it was a lot of, a person speaking with it, in the inner dialogue with the computer. I mean, granted, you got it with like Professor Stein and Ronnie Raymond, but at the same time, this was definitely like a moment of, the computer trying to argue like, no, don't kill everyone, that kind of a thing, and I think there's even an issue where the character's son tries to take Deathlok to show and tell, like that kind of thing, where it was, played off the absurdity of some of it. But yeah, that was Deathlok was one that he did with Dennis Cohen, who also was part of Milestone. So
yeah, so it was just funny, like his name would just kind of pop up for me, and then later, after Justice League had wrapped, and I was a fan of his. Going into Ben 10 for a second, like I always liked the concept, but I was never into the original show that much. I didn't watch it. I just thought it was a neat idea.
Mm-hmm.
But word came when they were doing that first like kind of revamp of it, when they were doing Alien Force, and the shtick was that they were aging everybody up like 5 years, so they were like teenagers and stuff. And I was kind of intrigued by that, so I was like, let me, I'll just check it out. And then so I watched one, and then I watched another one, and before I know it, like I'm watching it a bunch of times. And then Clifton, like I think, one of the times like we went out to dinner or something like that on Friday, I was telling you like I'm getting kind of into Ben 10.
Right.
Like, who's doing it? And you were like, and I'm like, it's Dwayne McDuffie. And we were like, what? And we're like, yeah, I had no idea he was on this.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like I fell in love with his stuff in Justice League though. Like, I mean,
yeah,
Justice League Unlimited, which is, again, like I'd kind of gotten away from sort of the Batman the animated series and Superman stuff. Surprisingly, I know you guys don't believe me, but there was a point where like I wasn't watching that stuff when it was getting made, and I got back into it around Justice League season 2. Mm-hmm. Frank, when you were like, no, Justice League really good, you should check it out.
Yeah,
I started getting into it, and then like the Star-Crossed event was what, like I was like, oh my god, like this is awesome. Yeah.
I mean, he wrote like, I don't remember like, I'd love to talk about Star-Crossed, but like he wrote a fair amount, again, like another 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. He wrote 8 episodes of the original season of Justice League, with Star-Crossed being the thing that he wrote. So basically he wrote another 11 episodes, right?
Yeah. John Ridley did an episode of Star-Crossed also. Just throwing it out there. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he did like, I think part 2 or something like that.
Okay.
Which was another one, which really quick. So really quick, because I know John Ridley was also producer on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air for a little while. Also, right? And eagle-eyed fans of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air will know when Will and Carlton move into the pool house, you could see the Milestone books framed on the wall by the door.
Very cool.
Like I remember as a kid noticing it. I'm like, that's that book my brother's reading. Right. Like on the wall back there. I'm like, oh, okay. And then it wasn't later that I'm like, okay. I guess that there was a connection. I guess they knew each other.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was just, representing the good stuff at the time. So
yeah.
But no, he wrote Brave and the Bold, Fury, Metamorphosis Part 2, Maid of Honor, The Terror Beyond.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Terror Beyond.
Hereafter, which is another good one.
It's a great one.
And then what's the other one? Hereafter, Wild Cards.
Mm-hmm.
How could you have a problem with that one? And then because it sets up some stuff for later. And Star-Crossed. And then he wrote Star-Crossed. So
right.
Of all of those, I'd have to say Terror Beyond's the one that's got is that the one with Grundy?
Yeah. That's the one where they're doing kind of the Marvel Defenders thing. With,
that's what I thought.
With Grundy and Dr. Fate and Aquaman.
And and Hawkgirl is sort of like the Valkyrie / Nighthawk. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, that's a good one. It's a really good one.
Yeah.
And Wild Cards obviously is what? Royal Flush Gang?
Yeah, that's the Royal Flush Gang, but like also the Las Vegas like real time.
Oh, the bomb
with Joker, where Joker like sets up the bombs and kind of like runs the whole league like rampant, like trying to find them.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's a good one too. But that's a 2-part. Is that the second part? Or is that just a standalone?
I forget which is. I forget how that one breaks down like that. I feel like I think the real time episode is the first one.
Okay.
Right, and then that's when you start getting like when you start seeing like how powerful Ace is.
Oh yeah.
It's part 1 of the 2.
Yeah, is it part 1?
Yeah, it's part 1.
Gotcha. Yeah, Fury's good. I like Fury 2. I mean, all those episodes are really good. Yeah. I mean, as much as I liked them, as much as I think, and I mean, you can't argue with Starcross. I think Starcross is one of the best animated things they've done for the Timverse stuff. I mean, it's the first time the League finds out each other's identity, and there's all the stuff between Jon Stewart and Shiera. And then there's all the the invasion and the fight at the end is really good. So
yeah.
You had given me tapes of a Savage Time and the premiere episode, right. and I was like, okay, that's cool. And then I caught Hereafter when it aired. And I was like, oh man, that's a really good one. That's like kind of their Death of Superman take.
Yeah.
2-part episode, which is one that McDuffie wrote. And that was I was like, wow, okay. Right. So like the stuff on the tape you gave me, I was like impressed, and it kind of wet my whistle. And then like Hereafter really impressed me. And then Starcross was the one that like I made time for.
Right.
I recorded it myself. I did the whole like I gotta get home, like this Justice League show, like I'm getting into it, and season 2 finales is tonight.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just talking about Hereafter. Hereafter is also the one. Is that the one that's got the Superman Revenge Squad open?
Yep.
Oh, love that so much.
I know. Oh man, Hereafter's so awesome.
It's such a like Bronze Age idea, the Superman Revenge Squad, but I love it. I love the idea of them teaming up to do that, and then it turns out to be so good.
Yeah.
And then the again, but the Starcross is like you said, it's an event. It's they touted it on Cartoon Network as being, this culmination of everything from the beginning, and you find out, about what the plan was for Earth from the Thanagar, and yeah, it's so good. And then the other thing about it is it has huge ramifications for everything going past that.
Yep. It does, yeah. No, it's terrific.
Yeah.
And so like they end that thinking that's going to be their last episode, then they get picked up
right
for season 3, air quote season 3, but it gets kind of relaunched as Justice League Unlimited, and now it's like a half-hour show. They're not doing the 2-parter thing, and then that's when we're getting the start of the Cadmus stuff.
Right. Speaking of which, but taking a detour away from that, Earth, the Justice League standalone Earth 2, who wrote that? Do we remember who wrote that?
What, the Better World? A Better World episodes?
No. I'm talking about like the actual like standalone direct to home. The one with the crime syndicate.
The Crisis on Two Earths, is that what it was called?
Yeah, Crisis on Two Earths.
No, that was him. That was McDuffie.
He wrote that too? Okay.
Yeah, that was him.
Because I think it's important that we mentioned that, because you can see like it sort of is supposed to be the bridge between those 2 seasons.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's one of those things where it, and just as we're talking about Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, because the League starts to expand in that movie after they deal with this, this evil, Earth counterparts from Earth 2 or is it Earth 2 or 3? Is Earth 2 in that one, right?
I think they call it Earth 2 because they're playing off of the Morrison Quitely Earth 2, when what used to be the villain Earth became and used to be Earth 3 became Earth 2.
Right.
But yeah, this is just to clarify. We're talking about Justice League Crisis on Two Earths, the straight to DVD movie released in 2010 from Warner Brothers Animation.
Right. Because I think that's, and I don't know if everyone knows that's why I thought that he wrote it, but I wasn't sure. But I think that's very important to mention, the idea that it's sort of, it does fit and it doesn't fit, because there are elements of things that I don't think quite work for Unlimited.
Right. They did some tweaking to it. So my understanding is that so you get Starcross ends, the show gets picked up. They go right into Justice League Unlimited, and then that's when they have the idea that like, we're going to use like everybody now.
Right.
Right. It's like a DC show. It's not, you're going to have the Justice League is now like 52 members, and you're going to get like a member of the original 7 as kind of like an anchor character for each episode. Then it's going to be kind of like a guest star thing. So you have like Captain Atom, or you'll have Supergirl, or, the Question in this episode. Right.
Right. Right.
And then and so my understanding is that they were supposed to do a straight to video movie that was supposed to take place in between the 2 seasons to explain like why suddenly their ranks like swelled and why it's a new watchtower and stuff like that. And so the script that came out of that was what ultimately became Crisis on Two Earths. So when they started doing the straight to video series movies, they took that script and I think sort of repurposed it to try and make it a little bit more of a standalone thing to not be connected to Justice League, but you can see like the strings there.
Right. You can still see the pieces.
Yeah. You can still see the pieces where like, it doesn't look like Justice League. It's not designed to really be that, but you could see where it would be a connective movie.
Right.
You know, and it's a great movie.
Right. Well, that's the other thing is it's really, it is really good. And that's the other thing. It was just about it was the idea that, you know, I'm not sure everyone's aware of the fact that they were, you know, it could have been our bridge from Justice League Unlimited, but But getting back to Unlimited, I mean, he wrote, you know,
he's all over this the Cadmus stuff.
He also wrote the sequel, which is Doom.
Yeah, it's another one from that timeline.
Yeah,
or timeline, I should say,
because he adapted the story Tower Babel from Mark Waid, which was loosely based on.
Right.
He's also credited for that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a bad one. I like that one.
Yeah.
It's another one that uses the Royal Flush gang as like the opening bit, and then tosses them away. So,
but overall, what I really enjoyed what you were getting into Justice League Unlimited was the fact that I loved how McDuffie was able to use all of the DC universe in ways that weren't represented as nearly as it was in the past.
Right.
I mean, he does when the Unlimited debuts. Dwayne McDuffie uses an extraordinary amount of diverse characters from the League, despite the time period of when they came from, in order to introduce. I mean, isn't that the first time we get Task Force X, in which he wrote
in animation?
Yeah. Which I would argue to say it brings forth, or at least the idea of the Suicide Squad, to animation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They obviously don't use the name.
No,
but
they couldn't use the name Suicide Squad. But
right. It was a different time. For those of you who don't realize, there were stuff before the current Harley Quinn Suicide Squad stuff.
Yeah.
He's story credit on that, I believe, but that was a Darwin Cook script episode. And I remember there's a special feature on Justice League Unlimited where he talks about that episode. And he was saying like that episode, because the first draft of the script was kind of what you would expect. It was kind of like a third person omniscient take on it, right? And then it was like the second draft was where they had the idea of like, oh, like what if we do it from the bad guy's perspective? Right? And then so he was like, that was the best like improvement from first to second draft like he'd ever seen on the show. Or like
it's almost like a heist movie for the Task Force X.
Yeah.
And you get some callbacks to characters that we had seen like momentarily, like Floyd Lawton. You know, he has a throwaway bit in season 1 where he tries to kill Aquaman.
Yeah.
Right? That was the target. Yeah. And then, you know, but yeah, I agree with Tommy. There's a lot of characters, much like that with a lot of the heroes, there's a lot of characters that we don't normally see in animation, or, you know, I think like the first one on the list is Ultimatum. And again, it's an attempt to get in those characters from Super Friends that didn't really, that's the one I'm thinking of, right? Ultimatum. Yeah. Where they basically have the characters that were, and it's a meta moment where they've cloned, right? That's the background.
Right.
And it's basically like you've got the Wonder Twins and Apache Chief and
Samurai,
Black Vulcan Samurai. Yeah. Going against the League, which was a nice bit.
But he brings Static in the Chronos 2-parter.
Yeah, the Once and Future Things.
Which for me, that was I had kind of like tangentially had known that there was a Static Shock show.
Right.
But I wasn't watching it at the time. Because like I said, I wasn't watching Batman. I wasn't watching Superman really at the time. I watched a little bit of Batman Beyond as it was on, but I kind of took a bit away from that stuff for a little while. And Static had like kind of come and gone in that period. Right. And then so I remember, so you get to the Batman Beyond like future episode of that 2-parter and Static's there, like Static as an old man.
Right.
And I remember going to you, Frank, I'm like, Static? Is it? And then you were like, oh yeah, like no, like Static Shock like crosses over with like Batman.
There's if I remember correctly, there's a Batman team up, a Superman team up, a Green Lantern team up, like with Jon Stewart, and then I want to say there's like a League team up with Static.
Mhm.
And I remember like I'd watched some of the show, but I didn't watch it regularly. The actual the was it Kids WB show?
Yeah.
I watched it here and there, but I definitely like I remember going to a con and getting a bootleg of all the episodes with the Justice League in them, or the DC like regular like all the DC heroes teaming up with Static. So that's like how I knew all the background of that stuff. So it was I knew when I saw it, I was like, oh, well, this makes sense because they've got this established thing that it's part of that universe where they've crossed over.
Yeah. If any of this sounds cool to you listeners out there, all of this is on HBO Max. Now, Static Shock, Justice League, like all that stuff.
Yeah, go check it out.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Because the other thing about it is this the first place that we get Jonah Hex?
No, I mean, so he's in Batman the Animated Series.
Oh, that's right. You're right.
Right.
No,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right.
But so we get him back in that Wild West episode, which you get sort of like an allusion to the fact he had traveled through time also.
Right. Yeah, because he recognized immediately that Jon Stewart and Wonder Woman are from the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has no problem recognizing that. That's a good bit. But yeah, there's that one with Kronos, and then there's also like that's the Weird Western Tales, which is part 1, and then Time Warped is part 2, and that's the one where they go to the future and it's Old Man Static, and then you get to see Batman meet Old Man Bruce Wayne, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a scene with 3 Batmans in it at one point. It's Old Man Bruce, it's present day Bruce as Batman, and Terry as Batman.
Right. So you have that great bit of Kevin Conroy being Batman and Old Man Bruce Wayne, and then like you said, Will Friedle as Terry, which is fun. Yeah, great stuff. Really good stuff.
No, and like that stuff is really like the moments also where like all of that Bruce Timm stuff starts to get like stitched together. Like there's a little bit of callback to Superman and Batman Beyond, but like Justice League Unlimited is like really where it starts. Like no, it's all together, and we're going back to everything. Which was like my understanding too, listening to them talk on that special feature, like some of it was just kind of like dumb luck. They're like some of it was like absolutely planned out, but some other things were sort of like as themes kind of revealed themselves, they kind of thought that like, oh wait, like we did this one episode and we can kind of call back to that and that would fit.
Right.
Like
right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. When you get all the Cadmus stuff, definitely and the idea like bringing in Amanda Waller and all that stuff, when they start to put all the pieces in place, and like you said, when they call back to is it Hunter's Moon? Is that the animated Batman episode I'm thinking of?
Which one? Moon of the Wolf?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Dr. Milo stuff?
That's it. I'm thinking of Dr. Milo. I couldn't remember Dr. Milo's name. And that's a nice callback to stuff that like, Dr. Milo, of all the characters you could possibly get from Batman, the animated series, Dr. Milo's the one you pull?
Yeah. Yeah,
but it was cool to see that, when they show that table, like they show the two contrasting tables of the League, and then the Cadmus group of Eiling, Jar Eiling and Amanda Waller, and then him, Dr.
from
Milo.
Doomsday Sanction. Awesome episode, one of my favorites.
It's a great one.
Yeah,
it's a
terrific episode.
Yeah. It's definitely one of those. Yeah, that's the whole thing of Superman. I mean, how can you beat Superman fighting Doomsday in a volcano?
I know, right?
Like when you just talk about like cool imagery, like it's hard to beat that one, and then you get the whole, I took a bullet for you.
Yep.
I don't want to spoil everything for everybody, but I mean, granted, this is stuff from a while back, which is weird to think of, but that's a great one. I love Doomsday Sanction because again, it's a moment where like you see that the stuff that's been happening to the League is orchestrated.
Yeah,
it's pushing 20 years ago for some of this stuff.
Yeah. But no, if you guys get the chance to see Static, you can clearly see Dwayne McDuffie writes tangentially like a time setting between Static there and Static Future Static. Because in those episodes, if you could recount or get the chance to watch, you'll see he shows the time in which Virgil is introduced to the League in the Watchtower, and their interaction with the League presents itself in which it shows that he'll be part of the League, because at one point he saves the League from Brainiac.
Yeah, that's right. That's in one of the crossovers, right?
And they make mentions to what happened in Superman the Animated Series, in which Batman deals with Brainiac in those episodes for Nighttime.
Right.
Yeah. So what's nice is Dwayne McDuffie kind of gives breadcrumbs to what happened before,
Right.
but by presenting future Static, it's a callback to the people who watched Static Shock in its last season
Yeah.
before
Right.
it was canceled.
Yeah, he definitely. One thing I always liked about him was he would always take that deep dive on stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I said, the Superman Revenge Squad is a good example. What's another good one? Like I said, like the stuff to Task Force X, the idea that, just using that name, like not everyone knows that the Task Force X is what Suicide Squad really, that's like where that comes from. Not everyone's going to know that.
He did all your favorites. He did, like he does
Yes.
Question Authority, Hunter's Moon.
Yep.
I mean, it's insane. He did Epilogue, Panic in the Side, Divided We Fall. I mean, he's the one that gave us what Captain Marvel versus Superman, which is
Clash.
Yeah, Clash. Which was presented from Kingdom Come, and he readapts it for animation to make people who didn't read the book see how spectacular fight between Captain Marvel and Superman would be.
Yeah. One of the things I love about that one is the fact that we get to see Superman be jealous.
Yes.
Like, and not in like a Silver Age Lois Laney type, way. It's definitely like he's very human in that book.
Yes.
Or not in that book, in that episode. Like, that's not something we don't always get with Superman.
Yeah.
Superman's supposed to be like the paragon of heroics, and in this one, it's like, well, no, next is Captain Marvel. Your flaws stick out.
Yeah.
It may be one of the ultimate testaments to how good Dwayne McDuffie was, is because the story has it is that like Bruce Timm had been wanting to do like a Captain Marvel Superman fight forever, like going back to Superman the animated series.
Right.
Like it'd been talked about for so long, and he was just like, we just never had a story that seemed like worthy of it, like
Right.
just wasn't just like a big fight. And then fast forward to Justice League when they're doing like all this Cadmus stuff and everything like that, like with all the stuff that McDuffie's helping create with the other producers and the other writers. It's sort of like that became the moment of like, yes, this is a perfect time to do him and Captain Marvel, because it's like you were saying, you get to see Superman jealous, but you can also kind of see like how far Superman had come, with all of this stuff. And then suddenly you have somebody who's a Superman-like character who still has all the purity and all the innocence that Superman had at one point.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, it's an awesome episode.
But yeah, no, I love that one. That was really, really good. I just remember one of my favorite bits is the bit with Captain Marvel just walking to the Watcher and being like, "Hey, hi, how you going? Hey, man, I love that thing." It's such a nice representation of Billy as Captain Marvel that, again, not everyone gets or adheres to, which I thought was great.
Right.
But yeah, Tommy, you said something about Question Authority.
Yeah, he also wrote that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Question Authority might be honestly might be my favorite episode of Justice League Unlimited ever.
Interesting.
What's the synopsis on this one?
Basically, it's the arc that concludes the arc, right? Is that what I'm thinking? And it's basically the idea that the Question figures that the only way that he can avert the Justice League becoming the Justice Lords, because it's an idea that Superman finally has enough of Luthor, and Luthor's present, and then he kills Luthor.
Right. They'd seen like visions of a Justice League gone too far in another world or something.
Yes.
Yeah, in a parallel universe. Yeah, when they meet the Justice Lords. Yeah, and then Question kind of uncovers that and begins to theorize that it may not necessarily be another world. It may be like a time loop that they're in.
Right.
And the events that they're on might be carrying them towards sort of like this superhero like arm race that's going to like lead the world to Armageddon.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically, it's like, no, I've actually seen not a possible future. I'm seeing the future. And therefore, he decides that he has to kill Luthor.
Yes.
And again, it's one of the things where you get a pretty, like, there's a pretty brutal torture scene.
Question. Where Question's being tortured.
There's also the stuff about where he's got the conspiracy board, on his wall. Yeah. And then there's the whole thing about eyelets, which I love.
Aglets, yeah.
Then there's also the reveal that Emil Hamilton did Supergirl's clone with Power Girl.
Yeah, Galatea.
That was the reveal too in that. There's so much going on in that episode in which McDuffie weaves in a lot of lore.
Yeah.
And again, it's another deep dive into like stuff that, if you don't know, again, if you know your DC history and you know the DC animated history, it's a huge payoff for a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. Which was, again, so like they did that first episode with the Question where you meet Galatea, and it's with like Green Arrow and the Question and Supergirl. And they had Question kind of as the kook and sort of researching just a bunch of different conspiracies and stuff like that. And then they had kind of had the idea of like, oh, like what if it's all like one conspiracy that he's going into, right? Yeah.
But he also, he wrote that. He wrote Flashpoint.
Question Authorities really is a really, really good one. So I have a bit of a story about this, and it's gonna sound name droppy for a second, but
go ahead.
There was a point, because that where I wanted to be an animation writer, and there was a point where like I wanted to find reference scripts out there, and there weren't really like I couldn't find much of anything. Like occasionally you would buy like a book, and there would be like one in there. So I had like all these other questions about writing, and I wanted to see stuff like practically on paper. And one night I'm kind of searching around on the internet, and this is when I knew Dwayne McDuffie's name and held him as a writer in very high regard at this point. And I found an old website of his that had like a contact email.
Right.
And I was like, well, like, okay, I just take a shot in the dark. So I, sent him this email, like I'm an aspiring writer, blah, 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 blah. I'm looking at, stuff for reference and everything like that. Had no idea if he checked it, if he checked the website anymore, right? I had no idea if it was still like an active account. I just kind of shot it out there. Within 2 hours, I get an email back from him he sends me 7 documents, right? And just like, the message in there is just like, just don't put them up, don't sell them, which I haven't. Like, it's just, they're just for me. I just have them to sort of to go through. But he had sent me Mystery in Space, Wake the Dead, Question Authority, which I read yesterday preparing for. I actually read the script.
Right.
The Once and Future Thing, Part 1, The Weird Western Tales, I Am Legion. And then he sent me outlines for Panic in the Sky and Doomsday Sanction, which this is really cool for me because in his email, he had said, he's like, this is just stuff that I have on the computer right now. He's like, I accidentally put some outlines in there. And I was going to take them out, but I decided but I thought like, no, that may help you out. So I decided to include them. And that to me, like, that is one of the most kindest things, which I mean, it's like, it's for a second, but in that instant, that message right there, I was going to pull them out, but I decided to leave them in because I thought they might help. I'm like, wow, in that moment, he's thinking about like my, like, progression as a writer for an instant. And I'm just like, it's so wonderfully like kind of him.
Right.
And so it's so like, I read Question Authority weirdly, because you're talking about it. That was the one I read last night. Like, there's such an efficiency with his writing in the like in the action. Like it's so clear and concise what he's doing.
Right.
But there's such an economy of words there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, like I said, Question Authority might be of all of it. I mean, I know there's a lot. I know, you know full well. I don't have to tell you, how much I love Justice League Unlimited. So it's one of those things, but that one might be my favorite of all of them. But yeah, like I said, Panic in the Sky, he wrote Flashpoint, I mean, there's just like he pretty much writes that entire arc, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's those guys in a writing room where they're breaking story and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, he was story editor for it also, so he was reading all the scripts as they were coming in and kind of giving notes on them. No, he was awesome. And then so like another quick story for me personally was, there was a point where I was thinking about like my progression as a writer, and I'm like, I can only get so far, like kind of being self-taught. And so I was entertaining for a while, like maybe I want to go back to school because I'd like study like TV and film, but I'm like, maybe I want to go back to school and get like, an English degree in creative writing and stuff and get like a minor in creative writing. And I was literally writing my college essay to be admitted in the fall. Right. And my girlfriend came by, who was, now my wife, and she was helping me like edit this college essay that I was going to submit. And that was literally the day that Dwayne McDuffie passed. It was like, I'm writing my college essay to try and be a better writer. I'm like, that's the day I found out about it. I'm like, wow, this is so weird,
Yeah.
So, Frank, you got anything else
No, the only thing I like, the thing I did want to talk about was, I mean, we were remiss without talking about the Great Brain Robbery.
Okay, no, go for it.
You know, I'm just looking at the list of stuff, and again, you know, I'm always blown away about the amount of stuff that he did. And the Great Brain Robbery is one that I also love because it's just you know, and it's in that one, and we can talk a little bit about To Another Shore. But the Great Brain Robbery is just the idea that you have, you know, it's Clancy, and then you have Michael Rosenbaum switching bodies, you know, Lex and Wally West Flash.
Right. It's a Freaky Friday.
Right.
Situation. So this is like in the Legion of Doom spot. So this is like season 5, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And you get the great. I mean, what I remember we talked about at the time, Zach, was the fact that how quickly Lex picks up on what he can do as the Flash. Like, oh yeah, like there's no learning curve for him at all. It's immediate. Like, oh, I could do this. You know, he starts doing things, and then the fact that Wally, as you know, Rosenbaum being Lex in the anime Lex when he was also Lex in Smallville, the idea that he's just so terrible at being a bad guy or being a villain. You know, it's such a. I mean, again, McDuffie wrote such great pathos and drama and action, but he also wrote really funny stuff too. Like, I mean, we talked about Damage Control, but this is definitely one of those when I think about funny stuff that he wrote. For me, it's always a Great Brain Robbery. Yeah.
No, that's a real standout too, which I love also. Like we were saying that, like, just the idea that Luthor's head in Flash's body, like Flash becomes a weapon. Like his body's a weapon with Luthor, like you know, at the controls. It's nuts. Like, right. But it is one of those, like, kind of like, duh, like, of course it would be that way.
Right.
Right.
But again, not everyone would pick up on that. And I think that's one of the brilliant things about McDuffie is, like, he got characters so well and understood stuff so well. Like that, you know, for me, and again, I mentioned just now a little bit about To Another Shore, and To Another Shore is great. I like that one because it's a Wonder Woman standalone. You get King Faraday, which is great. Again, a character that, you know, people know, but they don't know him, or they don't use him a whole lot. And then the other thing is just that animated sequence. It looks like Joe Kubert work. That's the Viking Prince, right? Oh, right. That is that episode. Yeah. That one to me, I love that one as well, because again, it's just a slice of DC stuff that, you know, we never really get. Even when we get to like the Tucker, like the Brave and the Bold, we don't really, as a character, we don't really get that character involved. You know, that's like the only place we've ever seen him. But finally, I don't think we can stop without talking about Destroyer. Right. Sure. The actual finale, the last episode of Justice League Unlimited. Yeah, the actual finale. The fact that, you know, that one to me is, again, another one where you've got some great Superman moments. There's a great Luthor moment in it. There's the fact that I always get excited about the idea of, you know, of Lex and Superman and Batman all running to the teleport pad, knowing they're going to go take on Darkseid. Right. Yeah. You know, it's one of those things when I think about the DC, you know, the DC movies slate stuff, where I'm like, you guys, why don't you guys look at this stuff? Like, this is the stuff that fans, you know, it's like the moment with Mjolnir in Endgame. That's the kind of stuff that people want. They want those big moments. And, you know, consistently Dwayne McDuffie delivered that stuff to Justice League Unlimited. Oh, yeah. Oh, like routinely. You know, and I've said it in past episodes, like, I'm a DC fan because of Justice League Unlimited. And so that's like if those guys, if McDuffie and Tim and like hadn't been huge into like the history of DC, like, you know, I would have never known how cool that stuff was. Right. You know, that, like, I mean, you get like Spy Smasher in an episode that, like, right. Yeah. Right. You know, of all things. Sure. Like, I don't know who that is as a kid, but the fact that they saw like a point to do it. And I feel like, what is that? Is that what is that? Is that the secret? Not the secrets. I want to say Secret 6, and it's not Secret 6. Help me. Which one? Which episode are you talking about? It's the general, when Eiling becomes the general. Oh, you're talking about the 7 Soldiers of Victory. Yeah, the 7 Soldiers. Thank you. Yeah. Which that one I believe was written by his friend. I think Matt Wayne wrote that episode. Yeah, it's a good episode too. But that's a really good one. Yeah, Destroyer. I think, you know, as a finale, I think that one, you know, couldn't have gone out on a higher note. But I do have the question of, was Epilogue at one point supposed to be their finale? Yeah. So going back to Starcrossed, right? Every finale they thought was going to be their actual last episode. Mm-hmm. And they just kept going. And they kept getting renewed. Right. So like they got picked up for Justice League Unlimited. They did Epilogue, and that's why Epilogue's got like that bookend with the airship that's supposed to bookend the way that the first episode of Batman the Animated Series starts with Man-Bat. Right.
And so they put that in there because I thought, like, for sure we're done. And then they're like, what?
No one over knew us now.
You want 13 more? Like,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. No, that's a good one too. I like all the stuff with Amanda Waller reveals that she throws out there, and that's really good. I like, what is the other thing? I love the bit with and again, you could argue that stuff is being played out now in the Batman Catwoman stuff that Tom King is doing, but it's the idea of, keeping the Phantasm stuff alive.
Yeah.
It does a nice bit of tying that stuff together too. A bit that, I'm sure a lot of people didn't, would wondered about. I know they played with it in the comics and the comic adaptations of Batman Beyond, and I think even in the regular Batman the Animated Series continued stuff, but hadn't really shown back up in the animation. So yeah, another great deep dive on stuff by Dwayne McDuffie.
Yeah, he did do a run of Justice League after this, but
he did. It's not bad stuff. Like at one point they bring in some Milestone characters. At that point, DC and Milestone were thinking about trying to bring back the Milestone characters and stuff. And like there's a Shadow Cabinet crossover bit with them. But it was one of the things where I remember reading at the time that a lot of it was McDuffie had all these ideas that he wanted to do. He wasn't really given creative free reign.
Yeah.
And then there was a lot of crossover stuff, or a lot of event stuff.
So he comes on after the Brad Meltzer's Red Tornado stuff.
Oh, after
he comes on after that. Brad Meltzer may have done another arc. I can't remember.
Yeah, he does a
little fuzzy, but he comes on like right after that stuff.
Right.
But it's as DC is gearing up to do like all these stunts, and so every single one of his ideas, from what I could tell, in doing research, it was, he has this idea, but somebody in another book is doing this,
right?
So that character's not available to him. So it was like it just seemed like his hands were tied his entire run of Justice League, unfortunately.
Yeah, he had I remember there was something to do with what's the spider god that weaves stories? I can't remember. Anazi?
Mm-hmm.
But that was one of the stories that I remember, that we kind of get like these kind of slices of Elseworld stories, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I've read those books, but I remember liking it. It just was one of the things where it just felt, you could tell that it was choppy but it wasn't him, because obviously he wasn't that kind of writer, but it just seemed like a lot of this, like we've talked about, a lot of the stuff was interrupted or derailed or pushed aside for other things that needed to be covered, or ground that needed to be covered for other things. So, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah. This run was around 2008 or so. And like DC was going full tilt again with events, because we had Infinite Crisis, and we're going into Final Crisis and 52 and all sorts of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was kind of the frustrating thing to him, from what I'd seen in interviews and stuff, that it was like at one point Justice League was the book you went to when you wanted to see all that big, not like, just the big stories, the big cool drag out fights and stuff like that. And then events started coming out and stunts and stuff, and that sort of like took the place. And so Justice League, the book, got kind of in this weird like no man's land where like he couldn't do anything.
No,
because like and even like he would do he would come up with like other ideas on the fly, and then like his backup idea would then be like, oh wait, no, you can't do that either, because this thing that we told you, we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah, there was a lot of that.
Like somebody else is doing this now.
Well, there was a lot. I'm not pointing fingers, but there was a lot of stories where a lot of like writers who came out and said, no, I completed a draft. I turned it in, it was approved, and then 2 days later it'd be like, oh no, you need to start from scratch again because we're doing something else that's not this.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a lot of editorial.
No, I mean not casting blame. I just understand that, like, that could be frustrating, and
sure.
But I mean, from an editorial perspective too, I mean, like, God, I can't imagine what it's like to try and keep like all those plates in the air. And like, I mean, stunts are hard to do. They're hard to do well.
Right.
I think for that reason, it's a lot of moving parts.
Yep.
Yeah. So, all right. So to close out, I thought that we would each like recommend like a McDuffie piece that we really, really love. So we'll go ahead and do that. But first, if you like the show, you can check out all of our episodes on YouTube and letmeknowhowitis.com. Just please, however you find us, don't forget to give us a like, subscribe, and leave us a review. Finally, if there's anything you would like to hear us discuss, you can leave a topic suggestion on Twitter or in the comments section. Our Twitter handles are show's initials at LMKHII. All right. Who wants to go first? Who wants to recommend the first McDuffie piece?
I will.
Okay.
Mine is kind of broad.
Oh, I think you're going to take mine, though.
Then you want to go first.
Yeah. No. Go ahead.
Okay. I'll just say Justice League in general. He did a great amount of contribution to it, but what stood out the most to me was his representation of John Stewart.
Yeah.
And Vixen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vixen was introduced to me through Justice League Unlimited. And other than Storm, really, there's Amanda Waller. You don't get too many other Black women in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was surprised to see that depiction of such a character that made me look into it more. But Dwayne McDuffie was able to bring forth characters to the forefront without making you feel that he's losing others in the background. Like, it never felt at one point where he was pandering. It almost felt natural when he included characters, and it fit with the larger story that he was trying to develop. I wish DC had continued the ball he started rolling in that regards, especially with Milestone, because they could have systematically infused those characters to a larger goal instead of having to create new ones that have already been created, both including Marvel as well. He had a great vision, or he was a great visionary in what he did and how he told his story and how he represented it. And you can see that just getting larger and larger with each new project he developed. Yeah. But for me, the shining one is Justice League Unlimited, because it introduced him to being a great writer on a larger scale with the tools that he needed to tell it. And I'd argue to say that it's arguably the best rendition of Justice League to date.
I don't disagree.
And that includes the Super Friends. Yeah, it includes the Super Friends, which I grew up on.
Yep.
And is it all available on HBO Max now?
Yes, it is.
Yep.
It's all available on HBO Max
So it's
now.
easy to go watch it all.
Yep.
Just binge it all.
It's great.
Binge.
Yes.
You did not take the one I was going to say. I thought for sure you were going to say Crisis on Two Earths.
No. I love it, but no, I see it as a whole.
I love Crisis on Two Earths. That's going to be mine, which we talked about earlier in the show. It's just a fantastic animated movie, which, I mean, if you want to watch Justice League, the show, which you should, if you haven't, it's great. And then just kind of like keep that in the back of your mind as you're watching Crisis on Two Earths, so you can sort of see how it connects. But it's just like, it's a well done movie. The action is great. The voice acting is really, really great. I think, it's just awesome top to bottom. It's my favorite of the 3 straight to video animated ones that he did, which he did that, and he did All-Star Superman, and he did Justice League Doom, which we talked about.
And simple summary on Crisis on Two Earths is it is the Justice League versus the evil version of a Justice League from an alternate reality.
Yes.
And it's great.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm going to jump back to like the early days. Like I mentioned before, Damage Control is something you can go look up if you want to see some of the earliest Dwayne McDuffie writing. And it's a lot of fun ideas still. It's not as polished as his later stuff, but it's, I think, one of his first story credits from 1989. And like one of the issues has to do with the accountant from like the CFO of Damage Control having to go make Dr. Doom settle his bill, his outstanding bill. And so you can just imagine the fun with that. So that's a good one to check out. But I'm also going to jump ahead a few years to Static. I had never read Static when it was coming out. I had not ever read the actual issues, despite being familiar with the cartoon, the animated series, and everything. I had never actually read the issues until just this week when I wanted to get ready for this and see, where some of the stuff started. And they are apparently slowly adding them to online. So Comixology, and then I read them on DC Universe Infinite, which I think is what they call their comic service now. And the first 3 are up so far. It looks like they're adding them possibly weekly, because I do see that issues 4 and 5 are coming to Comixology soon, if they're not already there. But like, I was really impressed, even today, just going back and reading these issues that I never read before. Like, they are really well done. And it is a big jump in I think, the polishedness of his storytelling from 1989 of Damage Control to 1993. So yeah, like the early issues of Static were written by Dwayne McDuffie and Robert L. Washington III, with pencils by John Paul Leon, inks by Steve Mitchell, and colors by Noel C. Giddings, and also Hanny Kildgard for one of the issues. And I mean, the book looks great, but like it's just really good storytelling where they jump in issue 1 with them going on, and then we get back to like how he got here in issue 2, and they just do, like, they present it really well. It's edgier than the cartoon for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like, it just feels real. It feels authentic. It's just really good books.
That's interesting that you said that it goes back, because I was reading Icon getting ready for this, and there was a bit in either issue 1 or issue 2, I can't remember, but they do one of those like 3 days before,
right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I'm like, this is 93 when like nobody was doing it. Now that's on TV every night.
Right. Now it's a thing. But back then, like, it was definitely sophisticated.
Yeah.
And for Static, the whole first issue happens where he's been active a while. And then it's not until the second issue that they're like, okay, here's what happened before. And they do it in a very interesting way. And a lot of stuff happens fast in those 2 issues.
Yeah. Got to check them all out. Yeah.
So that's my recommendation, is go back and jump back in to see where he started on in his early days.
Yeah. No, I'm happy also that stuff is popping up again, because I mean, for a while that stuff was not easy to find.
Yeah.
No.
So it's nice that DC appears to be wanting to do stuff with Milestone now. So, Frank, what's yours?
I would choose Icon. That's the one I'm going to go with. As much as I love the others, I think Icon's the one that it's a beautiful looking book. The stories, Rocket's a great character. Not that Icon's not, but it's just the idea of, I like the idea of trying to make, force someone to recognize their situation and what more they can do with it, especially if it's, a character that's supposed to be like their Superman.
Mm-hmm.
So those books are, I was just looking through some of the early covers and some of the early interiors, and it's just a great one. It's a lot of fun, and it's a good, I mean, it's even when you get to like some of the blaxploitation stuff like Buck Wild and like Sister Jones, all that stuff is great too. So
right.
Yeah, definitely worth checking out Icon.
No, it's awesome stuff. This is what I want. I wish, because now the animated movies have gotten to a point where, like, Bruce Timm is doing a couple of projects, but not all of them anymore. And, and James Tucker's like shared universe is wrapped up. And so they're kind of at a point where they're trying out new things. So you're getting a lot of like you're getting a lot of like Elseworlds, you're getting like Red Sun, Superman, Red Sun, and Gotham by Gaslight and stuff. So they're trying stuff out. I want them to do like an Icon movie or a Static movie so bad.
Sure.
Like, it would be fantastic. I mean, as I said in another episode, I'm telling you, the world will fall in love with Static if you just do it. Just do a movie.
Yeah.
And do it genuinely, right? Like,
right.
And just, it's all there. The character, the work itself will do all the work. Yep. Yeah. So, Dwayne McDuffie.
Yeah.
Great writer. Great creator. Anyway. All right. So everybody tell us your thoughts in the comments, or you could tweet us. What was your favorite Dwayne McDuffie story or creation? And tell us why. As always, we'll post links and examples to everything we talk about on letmeknowhowitis.com. Please remember to like us and follow us on social media. Thanks for being here. We will see you next time.